folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you for stopping by and watch. Well, today the rain finally stopped. It's been very rainy and wet for a few days here, so I was hoping to get outside and make some videos out in the sunshine, because I know many of you like that, and I do like it too, except today we have gale force winds, and I don't think that you'd probably be able to hear me through all the wind noise. And it looks like a lot of rain for the rest of the week. But hey, that's springtime in the Ozarks, you know. You just never know what you're going to get. It's a mixed bag. My mother and I, though, we were talking this morning, getting on to the actual content today, because some of you don't like it when I blab on too much before I get to the actual meat and taters of the video. And I apologize, I guess, but that's just my style. You can watch other videos where they just immediately start popping off what's going on here. This is a conversation we're having. So my mother and I were talking this morning, and we were talking about all the stuff that's going on, you know, the supply chain, the shortages and stuff. And she said, you know, I really believe this is worse than probably any of us can imagine. She said, I think that they've kept so much from us that we just don't realize how bad it is. And we'll eventually figure that out when it all kind of comes to head. And I agree with her. We both were talking about that. And so some of the things that I want to talk to you today about fall in line with that. It's more stuff that many of you may not be aware of, probably a lot of you, because it's certainly not front page news. You have to dig around to find this. And it's showing the greater problems that we have within the supply chain that's contributing to all of these problems. And it's going to get worse. All the stuff that's happening with the China being basically shut down, their Shanghai port and several others that they've shut down manufacturing and distribution and shipping almost to a complete halt because, you know, they're afraid of this. And then, of course, fertilizer shortages and the war with Russia and Ukraine, and just problems here in the United States with droughts and other problems like that. It's all coming to a head, folks, and you really need to be getting ready. But you know what? A lot of us believe a lot of this is orchestrated, that it's being done on purpose so that we can bring about this new fourth industrial revolution, the merging of humans and machines, and this great reset and all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, news articles are starting to pick up the story too. This one here, robots pick your food for you, right? So all this problem we have with labor problems, all the problems we have with just harvesting food, guess what? Fourth industrial revolution will fix that for you, folks. We'll have robots. And this article here, and this isn't necessarily new news, but it is talking about new advances, that, you know, biology is going to help us too. You know, chemistry and biology, that's going to fix all this problem. All these problems with shortages, we can't feed the world, people are starving, and it's going to get worse. Well, guess what? Fourth industrial revolution, great reset, going to fix that problem. Genetically modified foods, and other organisms that's going to produce more, be able to grow in harsher conditions. Just don't worry. Let the Great Reset take care of you, is the message that they're starting to spin out. The problems are getting serious. They're getting serious enough for the governor of Georgia to declare a state of emergency because of the supply chain. Last year, California governor attempted to do the same thing. But the point is that these states are starting to see that there's a problem now, and this problem's only going to get worse. It's not going to just wake up tomorrow and it be better. And so they are lessening some of the regulations on trucking down in Georgia to hopefully help the supply chain move a little bit better. Fertilizer, that's something that we talk about all the time on here. Major shortages. They estimate about 28% of the world's supply of fertilizer is wrapped up between Russia and Ukraine, and it's just not getting out. So 28% of the world's fertilizer. And before this happened, fertilizer was already skyrocketing. The last year or two, fertilizer has just been going up ridiculous prices. We were complaining about that on this channel a year ago, long before Russia ever invaded Ukraine. And of course, now that it's happened, isn't it a coincidence that 28% of the world's fertilizer is wrapped up in these two countries that are at war with each other? And so it's just worsening the situation. And this article here talks about how farmers are switching to manure. They're going back to the old ways and they're just going to start using manure in hopes that the production levels are at least decent enough from using the chemical fertilizers. I'm all for that, okay? I think the chemical fertilizers are bad. They're bad news. We don't use them here on our property, and we do our best to eat as little foods as we can that we know have those chemicals in them. But there's a problem with that, and this is what I've been saying. I'm not advocating for these chemical fertilizers. I'm telling you, you can't just take a system that's been in place for decades that uses these chemical fertilizers and just one day up and flip them over to something new. It doesn't work that way. That's why it's taken so long to get, big commercial organic farming up and going. It's not something you can just do overnight. And already they're complaining about shortages of manure because there's no fertilizer and what exists is expensive. So these farmers are running around trying to buy manure to spread out on their fields. And guess what? There's a shortage of that. And it's because the system is not in place. We haven't been doing that. And it's a shock to the system, that all of a sudden all these farmers with all these, millions of acres are trying to scrounge up some manure to put on their fields. And the system just isn't in place. And so in the end, it's going to affect us. This is all really important stuff. And, just little tidbits in the news, but I do want to shift gears a little bit. Still supply chain. This is the train stuff. And I think that this is another one of those big looming problems that a lot of Americans just don't know that's happening. And I've talked about it a little bit over the last week of some new regulations, government regulations coming down on the train industry, the freight train industry that's going to really hamper the movement of goods. They're changing regulations on switching of cars and loading and unloading and all that kind of stuff. And there's some complaining going on that, hey, this is not going to help the supply chain, guys. This is going to make it worse. And there's also some rumors out there that this is being done on purpose. I can't confirm that, but I will tell you that there are people talking about that. But what we do know is that there's some serious problems within the supply chain when it specifically relates to the train industry, the freight train. Shippers are complaining about this. They're complaining that these new restrictions are hurting them, and that they can't get their goods moved around in the country fast enough, that these train companies just aren't able to move their stuff. Union Pacific, over this past weekend, sent an email to its users that they were taking 13,000 cars, the rail cars, off the system. They were removing 13,000. And they said because basically they don't have the manpower and the train power to move around all these cars. And so to help kind of rein things in, they're gonna remove 13,000 of these cars from their system in the hopes that it frees it up. In the article, it talks about that the trains are getting so big and so long that the locomotives can't pull them because guess what, folks? There's a shortage of locomotives, okay? I've tried to dig around. I can't really find any concrete answers, but it appears that they just haven't been building locomotives for a while. And most of the ones that are in service are decades old. And there's just not enough of them. Maybe they're getting old, maybe they're wearing out, breaking down, maybe the parts are getting hard to find, to keep them maintained. I don't know, but several articles that I read talk about how there's a shortage of workers in the train industry and that there's a shortage of locomotives, even to the point that Union Pacific is pulling old locomotives out of the mothballs that they've had in storage, and they're trying to get them up and running and to try to help them catch up with all this backlog. And it's affecting everything. It's affecting the farming, again, food. We talk a lot about food because while all things are kind of important to the entire economy and us just functioning, but we can't live without food. So that's very important. Well, farmers are saying that they can't get any trains to come pick up their orders. These are big farmers that have corn, wheat, soybeans, other products like that, and they order train cars to come in and they pick up their grains or whatever it is that they have grown and they ship them off to the markets. And the unfilled orders are up 47% across the board, all over the nation. 47% increase of unfilled orders. And if you read in the article, it talks about how farmers, they may order, say, 10 train cars. They've got enough corn to fill 10 train cars. and only half of them show up, or none of them show up, or they show up way, way later than what they were told that they would get them. And it's causing a major slowdown in the farming of getting the food from the farmers to whatever the manufacturers are, whatever they're doing with that food. And it's causing a real slowdown. Burlington Northern Santa Fe seems to be having the worst problem. It didn't go into great detail of why, but their unfilled train orders are up 606% over last year. Canada Pacific is up 394% over last year. They're just not able to get stuff moved around, and that's becoming a real problem. Burlington Northern Santa Fe is struggling on just getting ocean boxes moved across the country. So this is at the ports. This isn't farming. This is talking about over at the ports, where we've had all these problems of unloading these shipping containers, where there's been this big backlog. Well, the train companies are having a hard time of getting the boxes from the ports to the train yard so that they can be put on trucks and be distributed across the country. And they're having a real problem with that, and there's just a major backlog of that. And part of the problem is they're saying that there aren't any chassis for these boxes. So for those of you that don't understand what that means, you've all seen the trains drive by that have those big container boxes on them, right? Well, they have a big crane that picks those up, and they set them on a chassis, a semi-truck trailer chassis. It's got the wheels on it, and the semi-truck connects to that, and they take them wherever they're supposed to go. Well, those chassis, the wheels, basically a stripped down trailer is what it is. There's a major shortage of those. Go figure. There's just a shortage of everything. And they're expecting that this chassis shortage to last through at least till next year. And while it talks about in this article here some pretty high hopes of trying to play catch up, the reality is they said that they probably won't be able to produce half of what they hope to this year of new chassis to try to help move things along. And again, they're talking about shortages in labor. They said they cannot get people to come to work. This is what a lot of us are asking. We hear the news and we hear the politicians brag about how, employment is up, unemployment's down, but yet we hear all these industries that say we can't get anyone to come work for us. No one will come work for us. And once again, these companies that manufacture these chassis, they're saying the same thing. They cannot get people to come to work for them. They can't get people to come back to work that were laid off during the COVID shutdowns. And of course, they're also saying that there's a shortage of just the raw materials to make it, which probably, even though it doesn't say so in the article, are coming from China. And because of all the slowdowns of that and what is yet to come, which is far greater than anything we've experienced because of the current lockdowns in China, I suspect this problem's going to get bigger. And so what we're seeing here is another piece of the puzzle, folks, that it's not just that farming is hurting because of fuel shortages and prices increase and DEF shortages or drought or all the other things that's problem with farming. It's not just because of the war in Russia and Ukraine. It's not just because of the lockdowns with China. It's not just because of increased prices of goods or other problems along the whole supply chain system. We're also finding out that just the movement of trains is becoming a real problem. There's a shortage of locomotives. There's a shortage of chassis to put the boxes on. There's a shortage of employees, and everything is just backed up to the point that apparently in some of these train yards, especially up around Chicago, they're overflowing. They cannot get things moved around fast enough. And whilst a lot of this stuff that's sitting in these containers probably can last a very long, there's definitely going to be some things that's going to have a shorter shelf life. And we don't know how much of it's being spoiled, lost, or other problems. This is all going to come to a head, folks. You can't sit back over the last 2 years and watch this buildup, this increase of problems within the food and the supply chain and everything, and just say, well, it's just gonna fix itself, okay? It'll be all right. Things are a little rough right now, but it's just gonna fix itself. And then there's constantly more. We're constantly hearing more and more problems. More processing plants get shut down. More processing plants catch fire. For those of you that don't know, the Evergrande stuck ship. No, not the one a year or so ago over in the Suez Canal. The one up in Hudson Bay. Yeah, that one. It's been sitting there for a month, stuck. And they just yesterday was finally able to get it to move. Problems like that. We're seeing this all over. The problems down there in the border that, apparently about $150 million in produce was lost because of blockades on the border and because of inspections imposed upon the state of Texas, by the state of Texas. It's just one more thing, okay? And I don't know how much longer it's going to last. I can't imagine at the state that we're in with our food supply and our supply chain, that it just seems like it's being held on by a thread, and that thread is fraying itself. And then all this other stuff happens, and it just keeps happening, and it's more, and it's more, and it's more. Folks, I don't know how else to convey the message to you to get yourselves prepared. Stock up. Do the best that you can. Some of you can do more than others, but that's okay. Do the best that you can. Shop around. Try to find the best deal that you can. Look for bulk suppliers. Look for wholesale suppliers. Maybe you have a friend or family member that owns or works at a locally owned restaurant. Not a big chain restaurant, because it probably wouldn't work, but if it's a locally owned restaurant, maybe you can order through them. A lot of times they're the places that they order supplies through. They can buy bulk items. They can buy big bags of wheat and sugar and beans and large canned goods, number 10 canned goods. And sometimes they can get it at a pretty good price. Maybe that's an option for you. If you have a good solid connection with someone that owns a restaurant, it's possible they will let you order things through their supplier. And that's just a suggestion. But the thing is, folks, is that you got to get serious. I mean, how can we look at all this stuff constantly happening and sit back and say, it'll be fine, it'll be okay? Well, it's not okay. We're already seeing shortages all over. We're already seeing rationing and purchase limits on a lot of items. It's going to get worse, folks, and it's going to start to really hurt people, our pocketbooks, and it's going to start really hurting people starting at the lowest levels, because there's already people in this country that struggle with eating enough food, children and things like that, and that's just going to get worse, and they're going to be the first ones to get hit. Make sure you and your family are ready, though, and getting your house in order, because there's some hard times coming in this country, and we need to be strengthened mentally, physically, and spiritually, because what's happening, it's going to probably hit us pretty hard, and I don't think that most people are really ready for that. And so do the best that you can to get your houses in order. Thank you all for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.